An arrow function is an alternative to traditional functions in JavaScript. Unlike traditional functions, arrow functions are limited by its very nature. The limitations arise from its deliberate inability to establish a scope for itself. That is because arrow functions do not have their own this. Hence, arrow functions cannot be used as methods or for any other scenarios where establishing a scope is required. But having a scope is necessary for anything in JavaScript to make sense. So where are arrow functions getting their scope? Well, from their parents. When we use arrow functions normally, it's always in the global scope and does not make much visible difference. However, when we use arrow functions, say, inside an object's method, the scope of the function defaults to the scope of that object. This is because scope of the object's method is the parent object. For the same reason, we cannot use arrow function as the method itself. Because the scope of the arrow function will default to the scope of the object, which is the window object. Now it is clear why we need arrow functions. It can be used inside methods of object and preserve the scope without ever using the annoying this keyword. A popular use case is the then method. The then method is a method found in the promise object. It is executed once the promise is fulfilled or rejected. The then method itself returns a promise and takes two arguments, a callback function for promise that is fulfilled and a callback function for promise that is rejected. Both these callback functions are arrow functions defined inside the then method, which is scope of the promise object. That's the reason the callback functions work. Hope now you know a little more about arrow functions. See you in the next one.